Our next speaker is going to talk about a subject that is very near and dear to everybody here because it is the hottest and the biggest thing in the industry, which is generative AI and LLM. I know for me, as a matter of fact, I just had breakfast with a bunch of CISOs. It was our main topic. And so I would like to introduce our next speaker, who has over 20 years of information security experience. He is the CTO of SentinelOne. Prior to this, he held various roles in engineering and product management. He has an MBA from Carlson School of Management, a BA in Political Science International Relations from Carleton College. So please give me a hand in welcoming David Gold to our stage. David, the stage is all yours.
Wow, this is quite a venue. I don't think I've ever presented on a soccer field before, so excited to be here. So I get the opportunity to talk about AI. So if you had AI on your bingo card, you can cross that off now because every conference has to have a speaker on AI. I don't know about you guys, but who here is excited about artificial intelligence and LLMs? Okay, a few hands. Who's terrified about it? Yeah, so that's kind of my household as well. My wife is staunchly anti-AI, and I have to keep reminding her what I do every day that pays the bills. But you know, there's definitely been a lot of hype around AI, and I think we're just at the beginning stages of it really becoming something useful and a tool that we as companies can embrace. So, you know, if you think about all the headlines out there, I'm sure this is on all of your minds, you know, how is this going to impact our jobs? How is this going to impact society? Or is AI going to replace certain functions? Is AI going to replace certain jobs? And are those people going to have to learn something else, move on? What's going to happen there? I think there's a lot of other concerns too, just around how AI can be not only enabled for our business, but also in a secure way. I bring up this slide because it talks generally about challenges that we have in our industry. But I bring it up not because you guys don't know these things. I bring it up because I've been in this industry 20 plus years, and these challenges are the same challenges we've been dealing with for 20 years, right? You've been hearing vendors stand on a stage like this forever saying, hey, you have too many alerts, and you have too many disparate tools, and you have data in too many different silos, and you don't have enough people, on and on and on, right? And it's kind of embarrassing, honestly, as someone who's been a vendor for 20 years, that we keep trying to solve these problems, but we're not. And if you look at the data backs it up too. We're not solving these problems. We need more people. We have way too many alerts triggering every day. We're creating more and more data than we ever have created before. And organizations are honestly really struggling to be able to solve their security challenges because we actually haven't solved these problems. We tried to with SIEM, we tried to with SOAR. All these technologies were supposed to be the magic, you know, potion that was going to solve all of our problems, and we still struggle with the same things. So hopefully as we go through this today, you know, I'm hopeful that maybe AI can be that potion that we need to get to the next level to actually maybe solve some of these problems in a meaningful way. But when we think about AI and the effect not only on security, but on society, are we really going through kind of the next industrial revolution, right? If you look at all the previous industrial revolutions that we've had from mechanization, from steam power, from electricity, from automation, you know, obviously with the internet, are we really entering a new age where humans and robots are actually going to be collaborating to be able to get work done? But with all industrial revolutions, it wasn't that the machines replaced the people. It was the machines did the things machines were better at doing than people, and the people had to change the way that, you know, they actually operated. Now, as I go through these slides, I don't know if you can even see them, but all the images I actually used AI to generate. So just wanted to point that out because when I first made this presentation, I actually asked Gen AI, build me a presentation on this topic, because I wanted to see how good it was, and it was surprisingly good. This deck was not created by AI other than the images, but it's pretty amazing the things that we can get done with AI. So I'm going to talk about 5 ways that I really think that AI and ML can fundamentally change cybersecurity, and then talk about kind of 5 problems that I see as well. So the first one around behavioral and anomaly detection is really focused on how can we use machine learning, artificial intelligence, to be able to look at vast amounts of data from across our organization, build models, label those things, relate those things together to be able to find threats. Now, these types of technologies have actually existed for a long time. Sentinel-1 was actually, where I work, was actually one of the companies that pioneered this on the endpoint. But what we're doing, essentially, with this is feeding a ton of data into the system. We're linking all that data together, and we're running it against models to be able to differentiate good from bad behavior. And I think this is a really effective way that we can use machine learning to be able to find those threats. But the challenge that we've kind of faced as an industry over the last 10 years is that a lot of times this can generate false positives, right? So you've seen a lot of the tools out there that generate a lot more noise, and you're just adding to the problem. So I think to do this in the right way, to use machine learning, artificial intelligence to help with behavioral anomaly detection, we really have to look at multiple data points and have as much data as possible feeding into that so we can have much higher accuracy in terms of the detections that it spits out. The second is around threat hunting. If any of you have ever done threat hunting, it's a very challenging thing to do, right? We've all had that moment where our boss or our executives come in the room and go, hey, I just saw on the news, Log4j or SolarWinds or Wizard Spider that attacked MGM. Are we vulnerable? Can we be attacked, right? People love this question because it disrupts their entire week from then on, right? Essentially, they have to go do research on whatever this attack is. They have to pull a bunch of IOCs together. They have to write complex queries. They have to analyze tens of thousands of lines of data. And then they have to write a report for their boss. And that probably takes, a week. Now with AI, what if you could just ask an AI engine that exact question? What if we could just say to it, hey, are we impacted by Wizard Spider? And what if it could go know about all of the threat intel out there? What if it could know about my environment? What if it could analyze all the data that I got back and 30 seconds or 60 seconds later actually give me a summary of am I impacted or not? These are things that humans are wasting their time doing, and actually most humans don't actually have enough skills to do this. We actually, at Black Hat earlier this year, did kind of a competition where we pulled random people out of the audience to use AI against one of our best threat hunters in the company. And the random people from the audience won 95% of the time in doing a threat hunt competition. So it's pretty crazy the power that we can enable for all size businesses to be able to do threat hunting, and not just the very large financials and very large corporations that can actually afford a team to do this. The third, I think, real use around AI/ML is around automation. I really think that we can get to the point that the AI/ML can actually do initial triage and investigation of alerts. So imagine every alert that's triggering your environment. You saw the data earlier, 4,500 alerts a day. We don't have enough humans to be able to look at every single one of those alerts. But what if the AI/ML engine could actually look at every single one of those alerts, do the initial triage and analysis, reach out to my other tools to pull data in, and write me an entire report with a conviction of I think this is good, this is bad. And maybe even compare that to all the things that you've seen in the past and all the other actions that other customers have been taking. And so we see a huge opportunity around automation, not just for triaging investigations, but that response action as well. When something happens in my environment, can the AI or the ML engines go out to all the different tools in my environment and actually take that automated response action? The fourth is around vulnerability management. Vulnerability management today is a very time-consuming process, and the easy part is actually identifying the vulnerabilities. The hard part is actually solving them and actually patching them. And so I think if we can train LLMs, we can train AI, we can train ML with the context that it needs, such as asset inventory, risk scoring algorithms, context specific to my environment, can we actually have the AI/ML engines actually go out and analyze and prioritize that data for me so I can actually understand what is the most important thing for me to patch? I think we can also use this for things like breach and risk prediction. So actually looking at data and actually getting more predictive in our models. We can actually build machine learning models that can look at what's happened in the past, can look what's happening even across some of the other companies in our industries, and can we actually go and get more predictive of when an attack might be happening or when we're seeing the beginning parts of the attack. And hopefully we can get to the point where we can actually even do automated patching, right? If we can actually get AI to be intelligent enough about my environment, can we actually have it go and actually apply those patches for me as well? So I think these are huge opportunities as AI progresses that we'll be able to offload a lot of that busy work that humans have to deal with today. And the fifth one is really around incident response. LLMs can really move fast, right? And when you're doing an IR investigation, the goal there is to move quickly, understand what happened, understand what the attacker did, improve our efficiencies, give you more visibility, apply more context. And by using AI and ML, I think we can really bring all of that together to be able to have the machine tell us exactly what happened, write us those summaries, make recommendations for how we can remediate. And these models can definitely bring back that speed and velocity to our teams. So those are 5 pros that I see about it. But I'm going to highlight some challenges too, because I think we all should kind of take this with some skepticism. So I love this picture. I don't know if you can even see it, but it's a bunch of golden doodles and some chicken nuggets, right? And there's actually been some tests where they fed these pictures to AI and said, can you identify which ones are golden doodles and which ones are chicken nuggets? Now, AI is about 90% accurate in being able to identify this, which is pretty good, right? But I'm guessing all of you out there could probably get 100% on this, I would hope, right? Unless you think that chicken nugget looks like a golden doodle, which is possible. But with 90% accuracy, right, that's not necessarily there where we're quite ready to have it do everything, to automate, to take an end-to-end investigation. The other thing around, and this is probably the biggest thing for your companies, is how do we keep privacy of data and security of data, right? And I think when ChatGPT came to market and everyone's like, this is the greatest thing ever, and everyone started pasting all their stuff in and having it write emails and having it write reports and having it do research for them, and then realized that all of that data they fed into the models was actually now going back into training the models, and now we had a huge data leakage problem, right? And I think this is what most organizations are probably struggling with, is we see the value in these tools, but how do we protect our data and how do we protect our organizations from that data leaving our organizations? There's also, I think, some concerns from a surveillance and monitoring and law enforcement side too. If we now have these models that can analyze massive amounts of data, you can imagine that we could start getting to more of a surveillance state too. I mean, imagine if law enforcement was pulling the cameras from the stadium and the traffic cameras when you were pulling here and your phone signal and was able to now start tracking people using AI ML. I think there's definitely some concerns for people from a privacy standpoint. There's also real concerns, I think, around bias and discrimination. It's gotten better in recent years, but I remember, this was maybe 8 years ago at this point, but they were training a model based on Twitter data, and the AI turned racist within an hour, right? So you really have to make sure that the data that it's being trained on doesn't have bias and doesn't have discriminations baked into the model, because the AI is only going to be as smart as the data that it's trained on, right? And then, of course, security, right? There's a lot of concerns, obviously, around that data theft as data is being fed into these models, and no one really knows where that data goes. It just goes into the void. And potentially even attackers poisoning these models to give false reports. I think you've probably all heard about hallucinations, right? And hallucination is where a model is so confident, yeah, this is the answer, and it completely made something up. And I sometimes joke that that's probably because it was trained on a bunch of communications from white males who are overly confident about what they're talking about. Cyber attacks are the other thing I hear around AI ML. AI-powered bots, the speed at which attackers can move to find vulnerabilities in your environment, you can use AI to automate this, right? And I think the barriers of entry to be able to do this is a lot lower too, because you don't necessarily need an entire botnet built out to be able to do that. Phishing, we've seen this obviously a lot recently. Most phishing emails are pretty easy to either flag using our email gateways, or even a human can recognize it. But usually it's because they're poorly written, clearly they don't really know what they're talking about, and it looks bad. But we can now have Gen AI engines write phishing emails in any language you want. And so attackers can essentially write something that sounds like a human, is written like a human, and is probably even written better than a human would write it who is a native speaker. The third kind of way attackers are using AI/ML is around actually writing code. It turns out that LLMs are really good at learning and being able to write codes. Simple things like scripts and Python and that sort of stuff. But there's actually some concern that it's lowering the barriers to entry, because what if we could actually use an LLM to essentially write the next malware? And while I do think this is a valid concern, I think that the way to challenge this is to make sure that your security tools are also using AI, because then the reality is they're probably trained on the same types of threats as the attackers would be using, and so you probably have a pretty good chance of being able to detect that. And so that's really where AI, defending yourselves against AI, is going to be so important. This fourth one is actually probably my biggest concern, deep fakes, right? I think we already have trouble differentiating from what's real and what's not, especially on social media, especially on the internet, and especially for our kids, right? I mean, it's so easy. I can go on ChatGPT right now and have it generate an image of whatever I want and go post it, right? And so, I think about like, hey, the CEO of our company, he's on the news all the time. You could actually train a model to sound exactly like him, look exactly like him, and versus that text that says, hey, this is your CEO, can you send me some gift cards? It could literally be a FaceTime that looks like them, sounds like them, and is asking you to do something. And so are we going to get to a point where we can't even trust our own eyes or ears anymore, right? And that's definitely concerning to me. And then, of course, data poisoning. I think attackers are getting smarter here, too. If they understand what data is being used to train a model or to inform a model, they can start putting in fake stuff to basically confuse and make the outputs of those models less accurate. We're really at the early days of AI, too, and I think there's still a lot of regulatory uncertainty, whether that's coming from our own companies. Every big organization I talk to, their legal team is really struggling with how to enable the team to use AI, but to protect the company and to protect the data for the company. And now governments, we all know that government legislation is done on a very broad, brush and doesn't necessarily have all the nuances. So we've seen, an AI Bill of Rights passed here in the US. There's the European Union AI Act. The UK and also China even has an AI use policy as well that ensures security and transparency and that sort of stuff. I won't go into all the details here for the sake of time, but if you are curious about regulatory uncertainty, definitely go read this legislation, because it's constantly evolving and changing, and it is going to impact all of us in our businesses. Costs are another thing that I think that people aren't really looking at. Just in terms of compute, these models are incredibly expensive to train, and there's a lot of compute involved in actually running this stuff, and a lot of GPUs. If you're wondering why NVIDIA's stock has gone up 5,000% or whatever, it's because of the GPUs needed to run AI, right? And so not only are there going to be resource costs and resources needed to drive all of the use of AI, it's going to have a real environmental cost as well, right? We're talking about a lot more natural resources, a lot more electricity. It's also going to require us to evolve, especially as security teams. I think historically we don't have anyone who's an AI ML expert on the security team. I think that's going to have to change. I think we're actually going to have people who understand how to build models and understand how to do this stuff within our organizations. And then the fifth kind of concern is around accuracy, right? We only got 90% accuracy on the poodle versus chicken nugget. But that's just one example, right? If this is security, we really need 100% accuracy. We can't trust a machine to be able to make that one mistake and then our company gets breached. I mean, we always say an attacker only has to be successful once, right? And so can our AI be only accurate 9 out of 10 times? I'm not quite sure that would be acceptable. I've talked a lot about false positives, hallucinations, noise. All of these things will make people not trust the AI anymore, right? If the AI says something and someone goes, well, that's just wrong, they're probably not going to trust it the next time it asks a question, even if that was a one-time anomaly. These models also are only as good as the data that they're trained on, and so I think we need to think about asking those questions of, if we're using an AI tool, we're building our own models, what is the data that we're using to train these models, or what was the data that these were trained on? So, what's kind of next for AI and ML? My wife probably feels that Skynet is what's coming next, if you all watch Terminator. That AI is just going to be able to take over everything, which I don't think is the case. And I also don't think that humans are actually going to be replaced by AI. If we looked at the data earlier, we already saw there's a huge shortage. So over 3 million more people are needed in this industry. So why don't we just make the people we already have a lot more efficient? That could really address that gap. There's also a lot of things I said earlier that AI is really good at that humans are not. Humans are not great at analyzing even thousands of lines of data, let alone millions and billions of lines of data. These are things that a machine is just better at, and we need to have the machine do those things and then inform the human of the output. I think it's also going to cause a shift in our teams. Rather than our teams being so reactive and going and doing all these long investigations and threat hunts and whatever else, hopefully they're more of the check. They're more of the check and balance on what the AI did. The AI can feed them, hey, we think this threat's bad, here's exactly what happened, here's the data, show your work, here's exactly what happened. Now they can say, yep, that's bad, now go automatically remediate that for me. So those challenges we've been facing as an industry for years, like maybe we can actually start solving some of those, right? Maybe we can actually start bringing our tools together. Maybe we actually can start giving time back in the day. Maybe we can actually start reducing the mean time to detection, mean time to response, et cetera. So, to that point, there are things also that humans can uniquely do that we haven't really quite figured out how to make AI or machine learning do, right? And that's things like intuition, context, ethics, creativity, strategy. These are unique human traits that we can't really train a machine to do, because a machine is only as intelligent as the data that it's fed. But humans have all this data in their head that doesn't maybe even exist somewhere that we could share with a machine, right? You know your coworkers, you know where they live, you know who your CEO is, you know all this stuff that you can't train a machine to be able to do. And so the human's always going to have to be able to bring that stuff in. The other thing is they're trained on data that already exists. So I don't really see that we're to a point that AI or ML is going to create stuff that's not based on something that already exists. Yes, it can create new stuff, but it's all based on what already exists. Humans have the unique ability to, I think, develop things that don't exist, that no one's even thought of before, right? And that's, I think, where we're going to have to kind of work together. But yeah, those machines, really good at data collection. They're really good at pattern matching, summarization, generalization. Those types of things machines are really good at and really efficient at, and we should allow them to do that. So I think there's huge benefits of bringing the humans and the AI together. That triage that I talked about, natural language queries, just asking questions of your data. That's a game changer, right? Writing queries hopefully will be a thing of the past. Having to know multiple query languages, hopefully a thing of the past. We can automate that data gathering, help reduce false positives by learning and re-feeding into the model, and hopefully reduce complexity by being able to bring data together and access that data wherever it is. In terms of our response actions, today we have to go so many different places to respond to a threat and work with so many different teams. But what if we can now have some conformity of action where we can basically take those automated workflows that says, hey, when this happens, these are the 20 things we go do. I can automate that and I can go do that for you. This is going to drastically improve the mean time detection, mean time to response for our organization. And it's going to give us staff efficiencies. Humans don't like wasting their time spending all week doing a threat hunt when a machine can do it for them in 30 seconds, right? That is a waste of time. So let the machines do that stuff, and now the humans can hopefully have much better quality of life as well. I think if you're in security here, you've probably experiencing some burnout, right? I mean, we all go at 100 miles per hour constantly. So if you are thinking about embracing AI for security, I just had a few things that I thought would be helpful for you to think about. The first one is really around your data sources that you're going to feed into these AI models. What is the data that you want the machine learning models, the AI models to know? And what data platforms do those things need to live on, right? Because the reality is you have to get that data in some place that the AI can actually access it, right? And this is almost the biggest challenge, I think, is getting the data where it needs to be in the format it needs to be for an AI model to analyze it. The next one is to really select the right use cases, right? What is the problem you're trying to solve, and what's going to be the highest benefit to your organization in the most efficient, lowest cost way that we can deliver? I think using AI and ML for automation, collaboration is going to be huge. And I really see, back to that mortal versus machine competition that we ran back at Black Hat, this is going to train the next generation of cybersecurity analysts. They don't have to have, I love the entry-level position that requires 7 years of cybersecurity experience, right? hopefully that'll be a thing of the past, right? An entry-level position should say, hey, we know you don't know a lot, but here's a really powerful tool that you're going to learn from. You're going to see how it writes queries. You're going to see how it analyzes data. You're going to see how it thinks about stuff. And I really think that this is actually going to help us grow the industry. And then finally, I think a governance program for AI. I'm sure your legal teams are thinking about this too. But if you're building your own models or using companies that have models, how do we actually make sure that we have clear policies, that our users are using AI and ML in the right way, that we're using company data in the right way, and make that very clear to all of our users. The other thing that I would think about too is if you're using AI and ML, and saying you do AI or ML is kind of like saying you do math, right? There's so many different ways to do this and different models. But we really try to think about it as we need to have a design that is helpful, right? And so we look through our lens of we need to make sure we're lessening a customer's burden. We need to make sure that anything our model delivers is accurate with up-to-date responses. It needs to be responsive. You can't wait a day to get back a question. It needs to be safe. You need to make sure your data is not going out. You need to make sure it's not crossing boundaries. It needs to be transparent. An AI should not just be a black box where you ask it something and it spits out a result without telling you at all how it got there. It needs to be adaptive. So I think these models need to be able to get trained and told when they're wrong and get better. And it really needs to be able to be in a comprehensive platform that brings your tools together. So when you think about the tools and how your organization's embracing AI, definitely think about these things when you're looking at that design. So as just some key takeaways, I think that AI has immense potential for defending our environments. I really do believe that those challenges that I highlighted at the beginning that every vendor's been talking about for 20 years, I'm really hopeful that we can maybe start solving some of those in a meaningful way. I also think attackers are going to be using this as well, and so we really need to start thinking about how the threats and the risk might be changing for our organization from AI. I think you really need to look at AI and how you can create that holistic team with your humans, with AI, and how they can work together to better improve the outcomes for your organization. And really, I love this tweet over here. The amount of intelligence in the universe doubles every 18 months, right? I guess this is the new version of Moore's Law. But it's crazy how fast this stuff is moving, right? This stuff is changing month to month to month. We're getting more powerful, more use cases, et cetera. And so you need to be thinking about this. You need to be embracing it. And you really should be putting together a strategy of how you're going to be using this to help better defend your organization. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate all of your attention and the opportunity to be here at Hacks and Hops. So thank you.